Hello and welcome to Joe and Aunt Share a Pint, your weekly podcast of movies, television, and other geeky crap. I am one of your hosts, Joe.
And I'm Anthony.
And we're here to talk to you about all kinds of things which we hope you're very interested in. So, today's topic will be remakes. Now, Hollywood remakes are a big part of the culture of filmmaking, and have actually been around since about 1903. Did you know that, Ant?
No, I didn't.
First one ever made, 1903, was a remake of the very first film ever made, which was The Great Train Robbery. It took 2 years for them to remake that movie. So, you think that remakes come out fast now. It's just imagine what it was like in the early 20th century, at the beginning of film. So, Ant, what do you think about it when it comes to Hollywood culture? Do you think that we over-rely on it? Do you think we should even do them?
I feel like there are some movies that definitely should be remade, but I can definitely also say there are some movies that shouldn't be. I think that a lot of times Hollywood uses it just for a quick cash grab where they'll make the movie and they really don't put the effort and attention into the movie that it needs for it to be successful because they know it's going to make money anyway because of the title alone.
I can understand that. There's a lot of soulless remakes that are being made at the moment, particularly in the genre of horror films, and they don't really work for many reasons. One, because the context of what made it scary in its given time period is gone, but also because so many films will come along and reference that original work, and it will just be derivative when you finally remake that movie. The Poltergeist that was just made recently is a perfect example of that. The original, what made it so enjoyable was that essentially it was a family horror film, and it was surprising because it really is at heart a ghost adventure more than a horror film, with some horror elements in it. Whereas the remake was just a straight-up ghost house movie, and it was done with a lot of the more recent cliches found in ghost house horror movies. You had the little girl talking to no one in the corner. Yes, this was in the original as well, but see, so many movies that have been made since Poltergeist have referenced that and used that because Poltergeist did it. And now that you're seeing a film that did that as well, it just makes Poltergeist look derivative when it did it first.
Yeah, all those spooky scenes that they tried to reuse, like they're not so spooky anymore because we've seen them in every ghost movie since.
Right, so what made the original special is lost when you're redoing it over 20 years later. Plus, with horror movies, oftentimes what makes them so special is a specific casting decision or a specific director that can find the right shots and can do the right timing and editing in order to make something just terrifying or fill it with a sense of dread. I just feel that Poltergeist was, when it was remade, it was marketed wrong, and I can certainly talk about that a little bit later.
See, one problem I have when it comes to horror movie remakes is that when the movie originally came out, it was scary because it was an original idea. It was something they haven't seen before, something that's going to creep you out when you're laying in bed at night. And if you remake a horror movie, you really don't get that effect in it because, like, you already know who this character is. You already more or less know what's going to happen. So it's not going to shock you when you're in there seeing it. You might jump a couple times because, you know, they surprise you with something, you know, something popping up on screen real quick or a random noise or, you know. But it's not something that you're going to take home with you. What I think a horror movie is supposed to be is, it's not necessarily supposed to scare you when you see it, it's supposed to scare you later when you're laying in bed.
Right, when you're thinking about it.
Yeah.
I can concur with that. I think that definitely when you know what's coming, when you're anticipating what's coming, it's not going to be as effective. Now, of course, you can argue that this is always going to be effective for teenagers, but teenagers think that anything is good. Anything that allows them to get away from their parents and go and sit in a dark theater and joke around and play and have fun is good to them. So any of these remakes are going to be good for them, but for pretty much anybody outside of that target audience, they're meaningless.
Well, anything that seems adult to a teenager, they're going to think is cool.
Right, that's true.
Because they think they're watching something mature.
That's true. That's 100% true. Now, horror movies aren't the only types of films in recent memory that have been remade, and I don't necessarily think that they're the only genre that is due for a remake. I actually don't think that horror movies are a good candidate 9 times out of 10 for remake as is. But we also have the Westerns.
Right.
Westerns are a very popular remake in the last 10 years.
Well, I'll tell you, the Westerns that they've remade, 310 to Yuma, True Grit, I dug the shit out of those movies. I thought they were great. One thing where, if you look at older Western movies, the characters, like, you see the characters doing some things that are honestly just kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
And they'll put similar scenes in the newer movies, but they give more background and explanation as to why this character can do that.
In an older film, you would just look at the actor playing it and you would believe the situation that was brought forth to you just because of the actor that was in that role.
Right.
John Wayne could get away with doing a lot of stuff just because it's John Wayne. Mm-hmm. I think that there's a lot of good to be said about the Western remakes. I think that's one of the genres that's probably had the most success when it comes to a remake. 310 to Yuma, I know, is on like probably my top 10 of all films of all time, that remake. And True Grit, I also found was just an amazing film. So I have seen the original True Grit and think it's a great movie. Right. And 310 to Yuma, I do want to get around to watching at some point.
I watched it a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, it didn't stick with me.
Okay.
You know, I can't tell you all that much about it because I really wasn't all that blown away by it.
Right.
But I love the remake of it.
Yeah.
Russell Crowe as Ben Wade was absolutely awesome.
Right. And I think even more impressive for me, and who left more of an impact for me personally, was Ben Foster playing Charlie. I thought that he was an amazing character.
Yeah.
And I had so much fun watching him every time he was on screen. And he was so quotable. They had guns, and those guns were shooting bullets. Morning, Pinkerton. I just had a blast watching that movie, and particularly because of him. But on top of that, the entire adventure itself is so well done, and it's so fun that you can't help but enjoy this movie that you're watching.
Exactly.
And True Grit is much the same, and I love Matt Damon in True Grit too. And I hope I see Matt Damon in more Westerns. As the Texas Ranger, he was great. So I'm hoping.
I forgot he was in that.
He was.
Yeah,
he was.
Absolutely. He was LaBeef.
Yes, he was. LaBeef. We're gonna have to go back at some point very soon and watch that movie again. I know it's on Netflix. Both versions, I think, are on Netflix right now. So if you're watching at home, go ahead and take a look at Netflix and see. I know at least the original True Grit is on there, and I'm pretty sure that the remake is also up there.
I think it is.
And they're both just really good movies, and certainly worthy of a watch. I'm hoping that sometime soon I can get a remake of High Noon or The Man Who Shot Liberty Vance.
Right.
Both really great movies, and I love the originals of those. And I'd also like to see a Magnificent Seven made soon.
Yeah.
Which is itself a remake.
Was it?
Magnificent Seven is actually a remake of Akira Kurosawa's Seven Samurai.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And I've watched both, and they're both great movies. And this is something I want to bring up tonight. One of the areas where I think a remake is warranted is if you're just trying to make something more understandable in a cultural context. The Magnificent Seven is one of those examples, because Seven Samurai might not make sense a whole lot to the average American film goer because it revolves around feudal Japan and the samurai. Whereas you adapt that into the equivalent sort of situation, which is let's go away from 19th century Japan and over to the Wild West. Okay, the important parts of the story were adapted, and you understand it now.
But would you really classify that as a remake?
I think I would, the same way that Last House on the Left is truly a remake of The Virgin Spring, which was Ingmar Bergman made The Virgin Spring, which was a story essentially about a little girl being picked up by a bunch of derelicts and murdered, and then spending the night in the same house as her parents, who take revenge upon them. It's the same sort of story, but it's instead of in medieval Sweden, it's going to take place in 1970s America, small town America. So I actually would consider that a remake, because the only thing that really changes are character names and setting.
Right.
Everything else stays the same. So I do consider that a remake.
That makes sense.
There's other examples on that along those lines, but I think that's one of the areas where a remake is justified. I'll actually include The Ring from what was the Ring? And like 1999?
I think it was early 2000s.
Early 2000s?
I'm not totally sure. I think it was early 2000s.
I've seen both The Ring and Ringo. The American remake is much better than the Japanese one to me. I actually can't stand the original Japanese one. It's boring. It takes forever to get to its points. And honestly, the Japanese lack of reaction, which is customary in a lot of their horror films, I can't take. It leaves me uninterested in the story and the progression, and there's no tension to me, because all these characters look like they're half asleep.
Right.
Any particular remakes that you've seen that you would then say are really good examples, movies that should have been remade?
A movie that should have been
It justified its remake.
Alright, so a while back I saw the remake for The Thing.
John Carpenter.
And I thought that it was fantastic.
It is a really good movie. It's got a lot of tension in it. There's a lot of paranoia and darkness in it, and the physical effects, the special effects, are simply amazing. It's that, plus you got Kurt Russell in it. And Kurt Russell in the 1980s can't be beat, man.
Yeah, that was a great movie.
Mm-hmm.
The first time I saw that was, I think, maybe 3 years ago, I think it was.
Yeah?
Yeah. So I was a little late to it.
Okay.
But,
better late than never on that one.
We had a really big snowstorm here.
Yes!
A bunch of my buddies crashed here the night before. We went out and got some booze, all hung out, did some drinking, and they helped shovel my driveway the next day.
Oh.
So then we all came in, we got some food, we're looking for a movie to watch, you know. Everybody's wearing like a set of my clothes because they all got soaking wet. And we find The Thing, so we put that on, and I gotta tell you, it was a pretty good time. I was all snuggled up in a blanket, just laying on my couch like a 4-year-old, just watching this movie.
It's really such good popcorn fare too.
Yeah.
It is. I'd say honestly, personally, it is still scary, and it's also got a really scary concept behind it.
Oh, absolutely.
It takes the body snatchers, but does it in a much more grim and just gruesome fashion. Because imagine the same concept of somebody gets taken and their body's replaced and you have no idea. But like when people get caught, or those poor dogs, man.
Yeah.
That's probably the hardest single scene in that movie to watch. Is as soon as that thing goes into the kennel and you see it and all the dogs are backing away and it just sits there and it sits down and it stares at them. It's calculating. It's like, you're scared, huh? Okay.
You know what?
It
scenes like that hit everyone, because for some reason you can watch, you know, a man or a woman get murdered on screen all day long, but you see something bad happen to a dog,
and pretty dogs too,
and it just hits home for some reason. It's like that's what crosses the line.
Yup. The only beings that are watching that are laughing at that scene are usually cats. Cats find it hilarious, I'm sure. But that scene, and it's just the dogs sound like they're in pain, and I know there are a lot of people out there that just had to turn that movie off and wouldn't watch any further after that scene.
Yeah.
And then when they walk in, you see the one in the corner that looks like it's being digested, and it's just in pain, and its son is struggling, and oh my god, and the end, Kurt Russell comes in, blows the one away that's being kept, and the kennel master then like actually jumps on him like, no, please. It's so human, the reactions in that scene. That's remarkably underrated, and it's amazing to me that did not play well in its day and age. It only got a life later on.
Yeah.
And critics later changed their opinions on that movie and said, you know what, we were wrong. This movie was really good. It's amazing. I guess they probably sat down and actually appreciated it, because I'm sure in its day and age they probably just looked at it like, oh, a gross out movie.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just gore fest. It's not really. There's very little actual gore in that movie. It's just creatures. The creatures are disgusting.
What year did that movie come out?
1982.
A lot of the movies that came out then, they really did focus a lot on, like, you know, the
gruesome,
and
gore.
the blood buckets getting dumped and all that.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, I guess when it came out, it was like, I get why people felt that way about it. It was kind of like, all right, I've seen this before.
Right.
I just saw this in the movies last weekend and something else.
Right. Yeah, here's Friday the 13th Part 2, I think, came out that year, too.
Yeah.
It's just like, alright, we just watched this. Here we go again.
Or you look at, like, the Evil Dead movies or something
like
that. Or it's
Evil Dead 1 was a year before that.
That's just a ridiculous amount of blood and gore, and it doesn't look believable.
The Evil Dead 1, I love that movie, but I don't think it deserves the place in the film canon that we placed it in. It's not really that good.
I'm honestly not a fan of that series.
I think we talked about this already, whereas then you really don't like the series in general. Granted, you saw the first 2.
Yeah, I did not see Army of Darkness.
I think, and that's a shame, because I think Army of Darkness is the best one. I know there's going to be people out there that are going like, dude, you're out of your mind. But I'm sorry, I think that Army of the Darkness was the funnest one of the bunch. But Evil Dead 2 is what most people feel is the masterwork. Now, Evil Dead 2, is that a remake or a sequel?
I would count that as a remake.
You would say a remake?
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely. They told the same story over, they just had a smaller cast.
They did. They had a significantly smaller cast, and the funny thing, the story about that is one of our listeners actually commented on our Facebook page, and he brought up an interesting story to me. He said that the origin behind that, the reason why they had to change the characters, is that Raimi and pals did not have the rights to the original film, and that's why they had to change things up like that. I actually looked it up, and that is a very common rumor, but I want to address that right here to Mike, our listener, and others who are listening right now. That's actually not the case. What it was is that the screenwriters, Sam Raimi and Scott Spiegel, well, they actually were trying to condense the original film into as little time and as little budget constraints as possible. So they figured one of the best ways to do that in order to catch people who are watching this new one, which actually did get a wider release than the original. The original was more like a small, kind of like an art house film. It didn't really get that wide a release because it was independent film, and independent really didn't make big market release back then. Like it will today. So they decided to condense that for time and money's sake to the 2 most important characters for this movie. Ash's sister, his friend, and his girlfriend did not really warrant to be placed in a retelling of that story. Ash and his girlfriend Linda were the only 2 characters that were really important for the sake of the event of the second movie. So they cut everybody else out, and they just included those 2. So, for Mike out there or anybody else who's wondering about that, it's actually a much more mundane reason why they changed it. But yeah, I do consider it in essence a remake as well, because you basically tell the same story as the original. Right. Even once we get done with Ash and Linda, it's basically the original story all over again.
Here's a question for you.
Yeah.
What do you think about these action remakes they've been doing over the past couple years, like RoboCop and Total Recall and all that?
I think action movies are a genre, much like horror, that requires a particular artiste and at least a director with an artistic vision in order to make them distinct. Now, I know a movie like RoboCop, I did not see the remake. You did.
Yeah, I saw it.
I saw the original. I love the original. I was going to see the remake, and I was really excited for it first, and then I saw the February release. And as soon as I've seen February release, I go, no thank you. Because that's when the motion picture industry, January and February, are the dead zone. That's when they put everything that they want you to forget was released into the theaters. I know, though, with Total Recall, I was kind of unimpressed because it basically just looked like a derivative knockoff of Minority Report.
Yeah.
The style for it just wasn't that unique or interesting, and it's a shame because with sci-fi, it's a genre that is so ripe with creativity, and any director who has a unique vision can really just put his own spin on everything. Like, love Fifth Element or not, Luc Besson, you have to give him credit. He made, like, a really fascinating-looking movie.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's silly looking at times. I'm looking at you, Gary Oldman, and your funny little half-plastic hat that you got going on there. Or Blue Twilight Girl who decided to sing opera with a hip-hop score behind her. But you know, at least the movie was unique.
That was a fun movie.
It was. And I don't want to see a remake of that ever.
No.
Because that movie is fun and fine as is. It's not a great story. It doesn't need to be remade. Okay, so that's my opinion on things. I think that action movies, you can remake them. Like, I'd be fine with a remake of, like, Terminator Genesis. Well, do you consider Terminator Genesis a remake or a reboot?
See, that's a tough question. I'd throw that kind of in the same category as the last X-Men movie with how they ended things in that.
True, Days of Future Past.
They managed to make a sequel, but reboot it at the same time, which I didn't think you could do that. Apparently, X-Men opened the door,
and X-Men
saying, like, hey, we messed up at one point, so let's just re-roll the dice on this.
Yeah, and it retconned out things. And it actually made, and with X-Men at least, it made one of the best movies that they've ever made in that series.
That
Days of Future Past, and before that immediately was First Class. Like, both of those were just great. So I think as soon as we got it out of the Bryan Singer era, because since Bryan Singer left, the 1 and 2 you had those, and then from that point on the franchise was kind of looking for another like artistic vision right there. And what's his name from Kick-Ass? I think it was Matthew Vaughn. Matthew Vaughn was the one who directed both of those, I believe, and that's a man with an actual artistic vision. You can see it. So same thing with any action movie remakes. As long as you have an artistic vision, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, like, I know that RoboCop caught a pretty bad rap. A lot of people were saying some pretty bad shit about it. Honestly, maybe it was just the timing for when I saw it. I was just hanging out with a buddy of mine. We were looking for something to watch. It was up on Netflix, so we watched it. We weren't expecting much. We were both fully expecting it to be pretty bad, honestly.
Right.
And it was actually a pretty fun ride.
I'm gonna have to check it out at some point.
I haven't watched it since. Like, it wasn't anything super, memorable, but it was worth a single watch if you have an hour and 45 minutes to kill.
I think the second watch is usually the watch that's the proving ground there. It's like, is this going to be any good? Is this going to be bad? Yeah, let's go check a second time. I also like to call that the Star Wars prequels principle. Watch it the first time, oh my god, I love that. Watch it the second time, okay. So, okay, what do you think are grounds for a movie being remade?
I think that if you're going to make a new movie, if you're going to reboot something like that, you need to get a director behind it who's actually passionate about the film.
Right.
It can't just be, a cash grab. It needs to have his own, I guess, flair is the word I'm looking for.
His style.
His own vision to put to it.
Right. There's got to be a reason why you're making
Exactly.
You have to feel like it.
But I mean, I get why that can be a tough job, because it needs to still make you feel like the old movie. It needs to still have like that same feel to it.
Right.
But put your own spin on things. So, I mean, we've been saying a lot of bad shit about these, but at the same time, like, it's not the easiest gig.
Yeah. It's really not. It's doing an actual remake is not an easy task, because you're always sitting there with the original staring you directly in the face, and you have an entire group of people that's going to be a part of the fan base of it, and they're going to judge it very harshly.
Right.
And they're going to be the first people to come out to the movie as well. And not only that, if it's a good enough movie that you're remaking, the entire circle of critics in Hollywood is also going to be part of that fan base.
Yeah.
And they're going to be the harshest judges. And you can say that critics really have no place in modern society and that nobody follows them anymore, but I guarantee you that everybody who goes to those movies is going to go check that Rotten Tomatoes score before they go and decide which movie they're going to see. If there's nothing out, or if it's that franchise that they're like, hell with it, I'm going to go out no matter what, that's not going to be the case.
Right.
But if it's something you're on the fence about, I guarantee you're going over to Metacritic or Rotten Tomatoes and you're going to look at those, and then look at those review scores.
Yeah.
And you're going to go, really? 69% fresh. Okay, alright, we'll give it a try. Or, 35, no, we're not going, sorry.
I hate saying that I do that, but if I hear that the movie got a bad score, I'm just like, I'll
wait.
You know what? I'll wait for one of my friends to go see it, and then I'll ask them about it.
Usually I'll wait for it to come out to Redbox. Then I'll just go and spend the $1 to go rent it and see for myself. I'm not going to theaters because theater prices are expensive.
Yes.
They really are. Especially if it's a date.
Mm-hmm.
Damn, you're going to be paying a good chunk of money to go see this movie. It better be damn good. Okay. Alright. I'd say the grounds for a movie to be remade, I definitely like the passion, and it would be good if you had the artistic spin, but I think the best way, the two best standards, and the biggest reasons why a movie should be made are one of these principles. One, it was made in an entirely different cultural context, a la The Magnificent Seven, when in regards to Seven Samurai, where you're trying to translate it into your culture's context and make it more palatable to your audience in your local area. Two, it has a book or something like that, some other piece of media that it's based on, and that it can actually go to for the original source.
Right.
So you can make it distinct because every adaptation has to leave things out.
I'll be honest with you, I'm really excited about this It remake.
Yeah?
I've been hearing about it for a long time. I love the original movie. I never read the book, but I know enough about it. I know there's a whole other side of the story that they just completely chopped out.
Yeah.
With the whole
mystical aspect,
the whole like godly characters that were in it, that they just took out and made the original It movie just a straight horror movie.
Right.
Which was good. But I heard they're making this reboot of it, and I want to see all that other stuff put into it.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty excited about this movie.
You know what? I think it could be really good, especially since my personal opinion on this is the effects from it have not aged very well.
No, they haven't.
You can tell that it was a made-for-TV budget that this was made on, and it's very silly nowadays, more often than not. So, if we're talking about a truer adaptation, definitely, I'm all for making it. But I would say that it would probably be better if, like, Showtime, ABC, or even, like, AMC or FX picked it up as a miniseries.
Yeah.
So we can go miniseries again, so we can fit everything in and make the definitive adaptation of this, and make it, like, go full on, make it 8 episodes, 8 2-hour episodes.
Like, I've had many conversations about that book with people, and they've told me some shit about that story that it just totally blew my mind. I'm like, wait, what?
They did what in it?
The movie doesn't imply any of that, and it all sounds like, like really fun shit that like I'd like to see. It's like, alright, well, hopefully this new one will bring some of that in.
Right, we got like a giant world turtle? What?
Yeah.
I mean, there's one thing that I hope they continue to leave out, which was the scene where the female character has all the boys have sex with her in order to take their innocence.
Yeah,
that needs to stay out. That needs to stay out. That was yo, Stephen King, what are you doing here? This is not good territory, man. You want an investigation on you? What is wrong with you? This is just weird. I don't think this is entertaining in the least.
If that scene is in it, I guess that'll be the moment where I get up to go pee or something.
Yeah, I'm hoping that any new adaptation will leave that out.
He's not gonna put that in.
No.
There's no friggin' way he'd put that in.
I don't think any director would want that scene weighing on them, unless they were just going in for the controversy's sake.
Yeah.
In which case, if that's what you have to resort to get this movie pushed,
then it's not gonna be good anyway.
Exactly. You're just doing a flavor of the week movie.
Yeah.
Adaptations that I'm not excited for, and things that I'm not excited for. I'm not excited for a remake of Big Trouble Little China at all.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah, I was telling you about this. I love the original movie.
It's great.
But it's so much fun, it's campy, it's complete 1980s. You take that out of the 1980s and put The Rock in it.
It's not gonna translate well.
No, because it's not a good story at all.
Certain things are supposed to stay in their time period.
Yeah. It's got James Hong, who I love. I love James Hong as Lo Pan. He's so fun and so over the top and campy. And it had Kurt Russell in it, and he was so fun. And I forget the name of the actor who played Egg Shen, but he was a ball. So you had all that cast in there. Plus you had campy 80s effects. You had John Carpenter in his classic style. And you had this musical score, which was just so cool and so 1980s. It's such a 1980s film.
Yeah, and that's what it was written to be. It's perfect.
Correct.
Just the way it is.
It's a defining film for its age. You can't take that out of the context of 1980s John Carpenter films and expect it to be good.
Why do they keep casting The Rock in these remakes?
I don't know.
Witch Mountain movies. Did you ever see those?
Yeah, I did. And it was just a goofball fest. And I remember the original Witch Mountain being taking itself a lot more seriously.
Yeah.
This was just a joke. I think The Rock is a good actor too. He's a lot of fun and he's charming on screen. I think he should just pick some better roles. I think he has now because he's in Ballers, and Ballers is going to be playing for a long while.
Yeah.
I mean, I enjoyed it for the most part, but the scenes where The Rock wasn't in the show, I just wasn't digging it as much. Even with Rob Corddry there as his wingman in that show.
I think that he just needs to slow down and start just picking his parts better.
I think he has, at least for Ballers.
It seems like every year there's a new movie coming out with him in it, and it's just I just saw him.
And it's probably not going to be that good here either.
Yeah.
At least we're done with the Rock Disney movies.
Yeah.
I mean, the Tooth Fairy almost destroyed his career, I think. That was... oof. That doesn't even deserve comment. So, I don't agree with remakes that are done simply for the case of just we need to keep the rights to this franchise, or we know this franchise sells, so let's give them another movie in this franchise. Let's just throw somebody on as the directing helm, probably a music video director who's directing his first feature-length film. This happens so much in horror. See anything in the recent, oh my god, what is Michael Bay's directing house called? But it's all his friends. They did Friday the 13th, they did Nightmare on Elm Street. It's just no.
Yeah, they're not very good.
Not
movies.
Good. They're not.
Here's a question for you. Are there any older movies that you think should get remade?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Like something that just deserves a second shot?
Well, I'm going to tell you right now. Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. Jimmy Stewart was in that. Great movie. Jimmy Stewart and John Wayne. I think a reboot of that, well, not a reboot, but a remake of that would be excellent. I think the other one, with the context nowadays, where we still kind of feel it, that sort of oppression of artistic expression, where it's just we're not sure what we can and what we can and can't do, that was sort of present in the 1950s with the McCarthy trials.
Right.
High Noon. High Noon would be great. I mean, I referenced both of these earlier. I think westerns just really work in remakes. I think they're really good movies to remake. They have great material. They often have excellent stories behind them.
Right.
And a lot of the directors that come to westerns, like say the Coen brothers, have distinct styles, and they know what they're doing. So I think those are the two that come to my mind where I'd love to see a remake of them. Zulu would be the last one. I'd love to see a remake of Zulu, to be perfectly honest.
If I had to pick one, my number one pick would absolutely be if they remade Highlander.
And they have. They're going to make it, so you got your wish.
I cannot wait. I love the original Highlander movie. The sequels, I try to forget that those happened.
Right.
But the overall plot line for the original Highlander movie was absolutely great.
I think, yeah.
It was an epic flick, and I think with how much better choreography has gotten.
Yeah.
And just super stoked for that. I can't wait for that movie to come out, and I just hope to God they don't mess it up.
You know, I just hope they have the right director behind that, and it really should be good. I would actually love for somebody like Matthew Vaughn to do that.
Yeah.
Somebody with a stamina who's done action, like Kick-Ass, okay, like the X-Men films, and has a distinct style. I would love somebody like him, see what he can do with Highlander.
I think he might be the perfect choice for it.
Yeah, Matthew Vaughn.
Yeah.
Because he's good at action, he's also good at more slow-paced stuff, and he has a distinct style. I think he's perfect. Yeah, he's really trustworthy with that. And I think Highlander is one of those franchises that definitely could do with a remake.
Yeah.
And it fulfills my third possible scenario, which is there was a promising first film and then a franchise that followed that destroyed all the promise of that franchise.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. That's why I thought that RoboCop actually could have made a really great remake. And it's more relevant now than it is even in the 1980s, because we've reached the era where RoboCop was talking about, with the police state and everyone watching us at all times. Hello, NSA. Hi, are you listening right now? We love America.
Yeah, but RoboCop didn't really touch on any of that. It was, like, the main focus of the movie was his personal struggle of him losing his body and, you know, like, losing his family and blah, blah, blah. It didn't really touch on any of the stuff that you just mentioned.
The original, it did.
Yeah.
It was in the background. I don't know about the remake. As far as you told me, the remake was really just on the character of RoboCop himself.
It was just an action movie.
It was just straight up action movie.
It was just like, alright, let's watch this, like, robot guy kick the shit out of some criminals.
And honestly, you don't need to keep the distinct and iconic RoboCop look. If you're gonna remake that, when we're talking about RoboCop, I'm all for just changing the design of the character to make him more modern and make him more sleek. I'm all for that.
He could actually move now.
Yeah, that's true. Honestly, I think that RoboCop should be a little bit more like Terminator if you're going to remake him, or the $6 Million Man.
Yeah.
Everything's internal, but, you know, it's like, oh, okay, maybe you take off the shirt and the clothes, and it's like, whoa, what's going on under there?
Yeah, but see, if they were to do something like that, that gets to the point where fans would really start raging out, because now he doesn't look anything like the original character.
And sometimes fans ruin their own franchises.
Yeah.
It's... oof. So, what would you say is the worst remake that you've ever watched?
The worst remake that I've ever seen?
Yeah.
Well, Total Recall was pretty bad.
Yeah.
Like, I was not interested in that movie in the slightest. And I am a total action junkie. I love a good action movie, but that movie was just...
It was a pretty generic adult movie. I felt like I wasted my time after I watched that.
It's between that and Halloween. Halloween was pretty bad. Actually, you know what? Scratch the first one, Halloween. But Halloween 2. You didn't see 2.
I didn't see 2. No.
That was a bad movie.
No, because I hated the first one, which is my choice. I hated that movie so much. Because here's the first problem with the Halloween remake. Okay, Rob Zombie? If you ever hear this, wherever you are, I know you hate criticism of any of your movies because everybody's mean to you, okay, and that's why you quit movies after Lords of Salem. Thank you, by the way, okay? Thank you for the Devil's Rejects. You can go back to what you were doing. Enjoy your life, sir. Okay? Stay away from film horror movie remakes. Halloween was awful, okay? It bordered on torture porn at times, true torture porn, because it reveled in the regular characters, who were complete pieces of shit, mind you, but still, reveled in them being slowly killed and torturously, and it did it in a way that's not, like, typical movie style. The characters were, like, genuinely screaming and pleading for their lives, and it's just unpleasant at all times. But the problem here lied in the fact that we tried to make Michael Myers sympathetic.
Yeah.
He had a bad childhood, man.
I'll tell you what, 2 did it even worse.
Yeah?
They kept showing his mom over and over again. They would show her, and she was standing next to a horse for some strange reason.
I heard about the unicorn.
Yeah, she was just standing next to a white horse, and I was just like, what the fuck is going on?
I watched that first one, and it's just like... his stepdad is sitting there yelling, talking about, like, you know, making sexual advances on his stepdaughter. That's disgusting. Yeah. That's just ew. And I know, like, oh, we're supposed to find the character disgusting. Okay, but that's uncalled for, okay?
This kid grew up and started murdering people.
Yeah, I would too!
Where he came from.
Of course I would start with the dad. He's just a piece of crap.
And that really, like, destroyed the whole plot of Michael Myers, because he was supposed to be just, like, evil incarnate.
Yeah.
You know? He's not supposed to have a reason behind it. It's supposed to just be that this is just the way he is. There's no rhyme or reason behind it. That's another thing that made him so friggin' terrifying.
Right. What was scary about Michael Myers is the fact that he could come from any family in any town USA. I more imagine just this quiet child who was just biding his time. This kid, and the way that they portrayed this kid, I wanted to hug this kid, okay? Because he kept, like, hanging on to the rats, and it felt like he had a problem. Like, he really didn't want to kill these rats, but he had a compulsion. It's not scary to me, it's more tragic. Because we're not dealing with a monster here, we're dealing with something that can be reasoned with, that would probably agree to be contained in a cell someplace. So when he turned into this vicious monster after being locked away for all this time, it didn't feel organic. It felt like you were forcing the original movie's concept on this movie. Now, I might have found this movie genius if we went in an entirely new direction with Michael Myers after that opening and said, okay, here we are, this movie's not going to be about the original Halloween where it's a slasher movie and Michael Myers breaks out on Halloween. No, this one's going to be about Michael Myers and, his personal struggles inside of his own head and the actual serial killer.
I think that's what he tried to do with the second one, and that's why he was, seeing his mom everywhere he went and whatnot. But it was just, too little too late, man. Just, come on.
Couldn't salvage this. So, look, Rob Zombie, thank you for Devil's Rejects, okay? I think you had potential, but you really needed to accept criticism, and that's why you've now quit movies. And honestly, if you're going to treat the creative endeavor like that, you have to be able to accept criticism. And Halloween Part 1, your remake of it, exemplified everything that was wrong with your type of movie, which is you were way too sympathetic to your monsters. And I don't mean you make your monsters sympathetic, I mean you have your monsters do horrible things and then try to make us sympathize with them. That's not how it works, dude. What's wrong with you?
Love Dracula, though.
Dracula was great. That's classic 90s music. Okay? I loved White Zombie in general, okay? I think you're really cool when it comes to music, but, when films, you needed to accept some criticism, and I think you needed to grow, and you never really did. So, no thank you for Halloween, and I know that there's middle finger somewhere from Ant for Halloween 2. Thankfully, I did not expose myself to it, so, even though you exposed yourself to him in that movie, so, thank you, but no thank you. So, why don't we close this out with a couple lists.
Alright.
I'm looking at entertainmentcheatsheet.com, and this is a list of the 10 movie remakes that are much better than the originals. Let's see what we think about those.
Alright, shoot.
Number 1, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. This is the 1978 one, with Donald Sutherland doing the famous and point. I've never seen this movie. It's on my list. I actually tried to watch this before the filming of this. I really wanted to watch it. I can find the 1956 one on Amazon. They do not have the 78 one. I don't understand why. But if you're listening out there and you know of a source where I can find it other than going and buying the actual physical copy, hey, we'd greatly appreciate it. And stay tuned for the end of the podcast, because you can always send it to us via Twitter or via our email account. So, I want to make more commentary on that one. Unfortunately, I can't, and I'm actually a little sad that I can't, because I know it's a classic, I just never got the chance to watch it. Number 2, True Grit.
We already talked about that.
Yeah, A Man of True Grit. Both are great. Go watch them. Awesome movies. Another one we already talked about. Number 3, The Thing.
Yeah.
There is not much else I can say about that we haven't already talked about. It's a great movie. Go watch it. Number 4, Some Like It Hot. This is another one of those movies that I really need to watch at some point.
Never got around to it.
Made in 1959. Marilyn Monroe. Jack Lemmon. It's young Jack Lemmon. Tony Curtis. It was a remake of a 1935 French film called Panthère d'Amour. I'm sorry, I'm not really good with French. So, it's definitely on the list at some point. Here's the first one that I can get the chance to talk about. Number 5, The Fly.
Ooh.
Yes. Jeff Goldblum and the Brundlefly. Interesting movie. How long has it been since you've watched The Fly?
I tell you what, I saw the original.
Okay, Vincent Price.
When I was just a little guy.
Yeah?
Many, many moons ago. And that scared the shit out of me. That movie terrified me when I was a child.
This dude's just gonna turn into this bug creature.
Yeah, that movie just horrified me.
It still is really a classic, though.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's definitely worth watching, and it's actually on Netflix, I believe, still.
The original or the remake?
original? The original.
Oh, I have to go face my fears.
Yeah, you're gonna have to go. We're gonna have to go. 1986. That movie. I love that movie so much. Really great sci-fi horror. Gross out body horror in that. It's David Cronenberg, and David Cronenberg also did Videodrome, and he loves to do, and Scanners. This is a man who loves to do body horror. And it's not necessarily just gore, people dying, it's your transformation of your own body.
Right.
And transformation is probably a much scarier thing than actual death itself. Death is the end. Transformation is you're now living with, like, oh my god, there's this horrible, like, hole now open on my arm that's just everywhere. I'm trying to conceal it, and I just have to live with this thing, and it's talking to me at night. Now that's horrifying. So, horror movie directors, if you're listening out there, transformation's a lot scarier. Jeff Goldblum was really, really cool in this movie, and they actually showed the picture of the fully transformed Brundlefly at the end.
Oh, no.
Yeah, exactly. When that thing presents itself to you. One of the most horrifying scenes in that movie, I'm just going to share this real quick, is the end when they're trying to kill the Brundlefly, so Jeff Goldblum, and he starts fighting back. And because flies, I learned about this from this movie, flies eat by coughing up a digestive enzyme on food and then sucking it back up. So he actually spits up a digestive enzyme on the dude's hand, and you just watch it melt and dissolve away and hear him scream in pain with this happening. Oh. And I'm just like, this is probably the nastiest thing I have ever witnessed and still will. The 80s were a lot more hardcore than anything we had done. Even the torture porn era of last decade, which everybody was thinking was the nastiest thing that we've ever watched. It is not. Go back and watch some 1980s film fare. It's so much worse. Just what they would go for. Definitely worth a watch. If you have the chance, watch either of them. They're really good movies. But I would probably vote for the remake over the original. As much as I love Vincent Price, and he's a charmer. Number 6. Did you see this movie, Heat?
No, I didn't.
Really good movie. Probably most famous for being that movie that Al Pacino and Robert De Niro were in when they absolutely hated each other. And so they have a scene of the two of them talking to one another, and neither of them is in the same room with the other one.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So it's reverse shot on them. And you never actually, and when you see them on the screen at the same time, like in this image right here,
right.
You listeners can't see this, but you'll find it. If you look up Heat, Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, you'll see it. It's actually a long diner table, and you're looking at the two of them, and they're actually digitally cut into one another.
Huh.
So they never had to be on the same set at the same time. It's sad because these two are like commonly known as like two of the greatest actors of all time in Hollywood, and they despise each other. So a little sad, but it's also known for the incredibly well done heist scene. So Heat, really known for those two things. Great movie. Definitely go watch it, guys. Number 7, Ocean's 11. I have seen both.
I've only seen the remake of it.
The remake is better than the original. The first one, charming Frank Sinatra and Rat Pack film. It's good. It's definitely interesting. But that second one, that remake, is that we're going to be referencing that over the original forever. If for nothing else, for the elaborate heist in the second one, in the remake. It was great. That, and it had that distinct style. Remember them? Remember how everything, like, we would be doing, like, the grand big plans, and we'd have everything perfectly linked up on the same screen, and you're watching the entire plan carry out from the entire plan, the team of 11. The original, I don't think it had any sequels. There were, there were 2 sequels for Ocean 11. 12 and 13.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great movie.
Yep.
Number 8, The Maltese Falcon. It's on my list. I haven't watched it yet. Have to check it out at some point.
I'm a little ashamed, but I've never even heard of that.
Really?
Yeah.
We're definitely going to have to watch it at some point. It's classic film noir. I don't know about you, but I love film noir. Whether we're talking about the old stuff or we're talking about neo-noir films like Gone Baby Gone, Gone Girl, or The Town.
Yeah.
All great movies. Number 9, Little Shop of Horrors. Definitely better than the original. The original is just a weird Twilight Zone episode, basically. It's a short horror film made in the 1950s about a blood-sucking plant that a man named Seymour begins to nurse back to health with human blood.
How would you do that?
That's a good question. Well, I mean, the remake, it sings to him, man.
Well, that's
and
nice.
his friend. And Seymour kind of hates that dentist.
So it's kind of like the frog from Looney Tunes?
Kinda. Hello, my baby. Hello, my honey. And the plant actually causes all the other plants in the shop to grow, and it's a miracle. And that's actually one of my favorite musicals of all time. A lot of fun. I'll definitely have to watch it again pretty soon. Number 10 is one I don't think you've ever watched, and that is True Lies.
No, I haven't.
True Lies. Amazing. We have a friend that absolutely loves James Cameron, and he hasn't forced you to watch this movie yet. This is probably, other than Titanic, this is probably his most iconic 90s film. And you know what? It's one of 3 iconic 90s films from James Cameron, because T2.
You were about to leave out Terminator.
T2. T2. James Cameron just had a good decade in the 1990s. He had a really good decade, because he had this, Titanic, and T2, and all of them were massive blockbusters. 2 of them starred Arnold Schwarzenegger. Actually a remake of a French film, really good, and one time we're going to have to watch this. I've never seen the French film that it is based on, but I'm going to have to at some point. Now, also on Cheat Sheet, the 10 worst movie remakes of all time. Number 1, Psycho in 1998. Vince Vaughn in Norman Bates' role.
I'm sorry, it's just kind of hard to imagine Vince Vaughn doing that. He's just so charming.
I mean, if you wanna stay in the hotel for the night, that's fine by me. I mean, you can stay. I mean, you want something to drink? You want something to drink? No, it's fine. You don't need it. You don't need anything to drink. That's fine. Mother, it's you again? Oh, mother. No, why are you doing this all the time? You killed another person. So, I love Psycho. I love the original Psycho. I've never seen the remake. I do remember back in '98 when it came out that it was basically the bane of all of them, of all critics' existence. So, there's that. Number 2, neither of us seen. Swept Away.
Nope.
I have seen neither the original or the remake. I'm sorry, I can't comment on this one. I can comment on number 3, The Wicker Man in 2006.
Oh.
Not the bees! Look, I think there's some value to a movie where Nicolas Cage runs out and punches a woman in the face in a bear suit.
I forgot that movie existed till you brought up this list.
Yep. Not the Bees was a thing. I've seen both. The original had Christopher Lee in it. The remake had Nicolas Cage. You decide which you think was actually better. Do I need to say anything else? I think we're good on this, right? At one time, I do want to devote more time to talking about The Wicker Man. I think after we've both sat down and watched that original together. So stay tuned to a future episode where we will talk about that. Number 4, Godzilla 1998.
Oh my god.
That's a lot of fish.
Oh my god. Godzilla 1998.
A movie so bad that Japan actually bought the rights for that movie and that monster just so they could kill the monster in 5 seconds fighting a real Godzilla. How bad does that have to be?
That was a rough movie.
That really was.
Yeah, something that loved it when I was a little kid.
Oh yeah. And when you're a little kid, because you don't have any standards when you're a child.
But I challenge anyone out there to go and try to watch that now.
I did recently. Oh my god, I love the Velociraptor baby Godzillas. This planet is fucked. It can reproduce? There's more of those? And I don't mean like just more, like 1 or 2. Apparently there's like a whole army of these things that are going to come out now.
You know what though? They made up for it with this last remake.
They did.
That they did, what was that, last year, 2 years ago that came out?
2 years ago, yeah. Yeah, that was really, really great.
With a really thug Godzilla.
Oh yeah, the fuck you looking at when the first time you see him on screen. Built like a brick shit house. He messed that bug up. Chased it away from Hawaii. That one got every era of Godzilla right, whereas this 1998 one, Roland Emmerich was like, yeah, I made Independence Day. I can definitely make Godzilla. We'll talk about another episode later on Independence Day when it comes to unnecessary sequels. Definitely want to bring that up at some point. But yeah, Godzilla 1998, it is definitely still as bad as it was once said to be. Just don't watch it. Don't give anybody more money that was associated with that movie. Number 5, 2007, The Invasion. Ironic that a remake of The Invasion of the Body Snatchers is on both lists.
Uh-huh.
The 1970s one is on the best, and here we are, 2007, on the worst. I think that has to do with the fact that, what I said earlier, if you don't have something to say about the movie, or bring it into the context of the modern age, you have no purpose of doing a remake on it.
Right.
Because in 2007, I don't think that we really had the same sort of context that we had in the 1970s when it was about urban decay, and in the 1950s when it was about McCarthyism and fear of communism. You could argue fear of terrorism, but as far as I know and what I remember reading, they didn't bring that aspect into it. So it was just a soulless remake. Number 6, Clash of the Titans.
See, I think that we're going to have different opinions on this.
Okay.
Because, honestly, I didn't think it was that bad.
Yeah.
It wasn't great. I didn't go out and buy it, but I watched it when it came out, and a few months ago it was on TV, and I did sit down and watch it again.
I think for a free movie, when you're just sitting there watching it on TV, it's okay. I think that it was just completely unnecessary, and I hate it. I hate it for just what it represented. It represented, let's take a movie that really its big charm was in the stop motion special effects, and turn it into another stupid CGI fest.
Yeah.
I'd actually say, honestly, that it's nearly impossible nowadays to make a big wow spectacle movie with just CGI.
No, you can't.
It doesn't work, because when it was back in the days of the 1980s, 70s, the 60s, when you saw really great special effects, you were sitting there wowed by it, and you're like, how did they just do that? American Werewolf in London.
Well, it's funny because that's actually what they're going back to now with a lot of movies coming out, where they're leaning away from the CGI now and trying to...
Practical.
Yeah.
I feel like Gravity was this amazing mixture of both, and that was one of the only movies in recent times where I sat back and went, wow, how did he do this? And I agree, they are trying to go back against it, because I think that audiences are now firmly communicating that CGI Fest, we know what did this. We know how you did this.
Yeah, we're not entertained by it anymore.
Right, it's not wowing us.
It's not special.
Right.
Or if they go back to practical effects,
yeah,
then that's going to wow us again.
Right, and I feel that was the big problem with Clash of the Titans right there. It's that you took a 1960s film, which, yes, has aged very poorly because it's stop motion, but you didn't replace it with anything that was simply amazing that would get the same replicated feel. Yeah, you adapted the story, but at the end of the day, the story's not that great.
Yeah.
Because you remember Clash of the Titans not because of the amazing story, you remember it because of, wow, Ray Harryhausen, man. Look, he was a master of special effects when it came to stop motion. I mean, it's really cheesy looking now, but look at how cool that was. He actually had guys fighting stop motion creatures. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Number 7, The Haunting. I've seen both. The sequel, the remake, whatever it is, to this, pisses me off.
Why is that?
Because you took a movie that was made in the 1960s, a ghost house movie that was all about subtlety, and wondering whether or not you really saw what you think you saw, or heard what you think you heard. And I am talking about The Haunting, not House on Haunted Hill, which I actually really liked the House on Haunted Hill remake. I might not be in the majority opinion there, but I thought Jeffrey Rush was really fun in that, and the whole concept, and it had Chris Kattan in it, it was just hilarious. The Haunting, though, you had Liam Neeson on it. How do you screw up a movie with Liam Neeson in it? So there's the problem right there. And Owen Wilson was in it. Okay? Catherine Zeta-Jones was in it. This had, good actors and actresses in it. And what happened was, you took a movie that was all about subtlety, and you adapted it, and you made a movie that was all about CGI crap. they turned it into a CGI crap fest, and it was a horror film, and they turned it into a ghost adventure. They did the reverse Poltergeist remake.
Right.
See, it doesn't work either way you do it. A ghost adventure needs to stay a ghost adventure and not be a horror film, and a horror film needs to stay a horror film and not be a ghost adventure. At some point, I will talk about that when we're talking about the ghost film, but I digress for now. Number 8, 2006's Pulse. I have seen both this and the original. I'm gonna be honest, I'm not really impressed with either one. I don't think the first one was all that great. The remake is even less so. It's another crap horror movie remake that's shot in Club Blue. I'm really tired of seeing Club Blue for horror movies. You need to stop doing this, Hollywood. Number 9, The Stepford Wives in 2004.
Oh.
Yeah, Matthew Broderick. Again, that's 2 bad horror movie remakes that Matthew Broderick was involved in. Keep Matthew Broderick away from horror movie remakes. Don't let him anywhere near it. How do you take a movie that was made in the 1970s that was about fear of the new feminist movement, of their husbands trying to rebel against them and put them back into these domestic roles, and make a goofy sci-fi comedy film about robots? It's just like, you didn't understand this original movie, did you? You didn't get it. You 100% just did not understand the movie. That's ironically a movie that I think could probably do with a good remake today if the right female director was involved in it.
Yeah, I'll agree with that.
Yeah, because the whole feminism is socially relevant again, so a movie like The Stepford Wives really could be remade today and it would be relevant and it would actually work. But it's got to have the right person behind it. I don't know, maybe a Sofia Coppola, somebody like that. Somebody, a competent female director. Number 10. Are you ready for some fun?
Shoot.
Are you ready to monkey around? Planet of the Apes, 2001, by Tim Burton.
Oh, that movie.
It had Michael Clark Duncan as a gorilla. A tough-ass gorilla, mind you. This movie should have been great. Mark Wahlberg was in it. Why was this movie not good? It was just bland.
Yeah, it just felt like the same thing that we've already seen.
Right.
Yeah.
It was Tim Burtonized, yes, but
there was like nothing special about it. Nothing sticks out.
Well, Paul Giamatti in the orangutan makeup sticks out.
I forgot about him.
He looks so goofy in that makeup.
He tried to sell kids aspirin at the end of the movie.
He did. I was just bad.
That was a silly flick.
It really was. I gotta agree that deserves its place on this. But in return, would you consider Dawn and Rise remakes or reboots? Because they're amazing. They are simply amazing. I think you're gonna agree with me that they are amazing.
Oh yeah, I absolutely love them.
And I love this new franchise, and it shows that Planet of the Apes was definitely a franchise that deserved to be remade.
I love those movies.
Or at least continued, because it's such a good franchise. It had a solid concept behind it. I really loved all of the old and the Planet of the Apes movies, and I saw them as adults, and I still love them. Because they just got good, solid concepts behind them.
I guess I would consider them reboots, not remakes.
Okay.
Because they did drastically change the storyline.
Right, and
they
were
movies.
Okay.
They kept the same idea, obviously.
Okay.
But drastically changed the how and when.
Right. And they were less about adapting, say, the Charlton Heston film, like the 2001 movie was, and more about taking the franchise and all the concepts and doing something entirely different with them.
Right.
Okay. I can dig on that. So, basically, if we're going to talk about a big franchise, it's probably better to reboot than remake.
Yes.
If they had rebooted Poltergeist and took the same concept and just had an entirely new family there, it probably would have been better if they hadn't been trying to just remake Poltergeist with the same scenes.
I'm going to disagree with that.
Really?
Because it's such, like, It was really good when it came out, but there's been so many movies with a very similar plot line to it. There was really no way that movie could have been good. I'm sorry.
Okay, alright. Yeah, alright, I can concede that. Well, maybe not Poltergeist, but how about, say, Nightmare on Elm Street, which hasn't had as many replicated plots.
I mean, if it had the right crew behind it and, like a good writer who really, knows the character and has his own interesting view on it, I think that they could definitely,
Right. I think they needed to switch away from killing the teenagers, though.
Well, honestly, my opinion when it comes to that, or any of the slasher films, is I would love to see them made into horror games instead of movies. I played the Slenderman game. I downloaded it on PS4.
Right.
They made a full-length game after that internet game took off.
Yes.
And I had a blast with it. And I would love to, be getting chased by Jason Voorhees. On my PlayStation, of course.
Right. Well, I think that's been the big movement as of late, because horror games, especially in the indie circuit, have been taking off.
Yeah.
And there's a resurgence of them. Granted, a nice number of them focus on jump scares, but I think that's going to evolve in time. We'll definitely talk about survival horror and horror games in a future episode.
Right.
Yeah, but basically, hold any thought you have on that, because we're gonna talk about it with time. I guess for right now, I think we've covered everything that we need to cover on remakes, which is basically, there are certainly rules for the remakes. I mean, you want to recap your major points?
Well, to what you just said, there are most certainly rules, and sadly, more often than not, those rules get broken.
Yep.
Because there's only a few remakes that come to mind for me that I really enjoyed.
Right.
For the most part, I just felt like, alright, yeah, maybe it was an alright movie, but there was no reason to do it. I think the only time you should really do a remake is if there's a real reason for it, like a real passion behind making the movie.
Right. Or if you really feel that there's something that could be said about this film in this day and age. I think that They Live, which was another John Carpenter movie, but definitely his most flawed movie of the 80s, could really make a great remake if they had the right director behind it, and somebody who had a good eye for this, because it's a movie all about paranoia and body replacement, all those sorts of things, and people infiltrating our society. So it might be a good one. But until you have the right person behind that, and the person who actually really loved that idea or that movie itself, it's not going to be a good remake. And that's what's going to happen with Big Trouble in Little China. I'm desperately afraid.
I think that you won't even notice when that movie comes out, because it will probably be one of those things where it comes out, you don't hear anything about it, you forget about it.
Right. And then when everybody references Big Trouble in Little China, they're like, oh yeah, the John Carpenter movie. Which is, a couple years from now, that's probably, thankfully, what they're going to say about Poltergeist. Oh yeah, that was the movie with Coach, right? Craig T. Nelson, Mr. Incredible? Yeah, he was in that. Yeah, the one with the parents smoking pot and they're here. Yeah. Yeah, that movie. Yeah, nobody's going to remember the remake. Yeah. I'm happy for that.
Hopefully.
I know that's already happened with Nightmare on Elm Street, where people are like, dude, Robert Englund is Freddy. What are you talking about, Jackie Earle Haley?
That was one of those things where that movie came out, I watched it, and then it was just like nobody really said a word. It was kind of like, alright, well, I guess that's a thing now.
Right, well, I guess that happened. I really liked Rorschach.
But whenever people talk about Freddy, they go back to the old one, so it's like, okay, I guess we just pretend like that didn't happen.
I'm really happy that we do.
Same thing with Friday the
Friday the 13th.
Yeah. That, like, we do the same thing. It's like, oh yeah, so Sam Winchester fought Jason.
And Jason was a track star, man.
Yeah.
And these kids were just smoking so much pot. I don't know, man. Jason switched over from sex to pot, man. It's like, do not smoke. It's definitely like a Republican's wet dream, that movie was. Damn, these kids and their pot smoking. I wish somebody would come along and just kill them with a machete. So, and also to recap my final major point, which is, Rob Zombie, please don't make any more horror movie remakes. Just make your own stuff, okay? If you're gonna go back to horror movies, or any movies in general, just don't. Enjoy your retirement. I'm sure you'll have a very nice day and a nice life. I wish you all the best. Just never touch Halloween again. So I guess that concludes episode 2. If you guys would like to contact us, please go ahead and email us at joeandantshareapint@gmail.com. You can also find us on Twitter at joeandant. You can like us on Facebook at joeandantShareAPint. And you can also follow us or subscribe to us on YouTube at joeand. We are now available on Buzzsprout.com on our main page. We're on iTunes available for download. We are on Stitcher available for download and listening. We are going to be on SoundCloud, so go ahead and look us up on there. Or you can go ahead and find us on YouTube. Any questions, go ahead and direct them directly to our email or our Twitter. Thank you everybody who was engaged in the conversation so far, and have a good night.